This week in Linux, we have so much to talk about. First of all, KDE developers have launched their own company called Techpaladin Software. Also, the Codeweavers team has released the latest version of their CrossOver software with CrossOver 25. The Garuda Linux team have the latest release of their distribution called Broadwing. And also the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, has released a new open source tool for detecting cell site simulators called Rayhunter. And we'll talk about what all that meant later in the show. All of this and more on This Week in Linux, the weekly news show that keeps you up to date with what's going on in the Linux and open source world. Now let's jump right into your source for Linux good news. This episode of Twill is sponsored by Sandfly Security. More on them later. There's a new Linux company out there turning the gears to help the ecosystem. And that's a new open source consultancy firm called Techpaladin Software. Why are we talking about a new company? Well, also the turning the gears is a reference to this because this company is founded by KDE developers. So they're turning the gears, the KDE gears, and the logo for, you get it. So Techpaladin Software is founded by Nate Graham and David Amundsen from KDE, and also has about a dozen or so people formerly with Blue Systems that are joining the Techpaladin Software company. And this is also where the Blue Systems contract that was with Valve is being inherited by Techpaladin. So they're basically transferring the work for a higher stuff that they were doing with Blue Systems into Techpaladin Software. But they're going to be continuing the work on the Steam Deck desktop mode, which of course runs KDE Plasma. And you might be wondering, what's changing overall? Why is this happening? Well, not a lot is changing. It's the same team, same KDE focus, just under a new name. But they will continue to sponsor KDE developers, and also KDE EV Patron will still be continuing as the Techpaladin Software company. And also, it's going to have a very similar structure in terms of business model, where the companies will pay Techpaladin to work on open source projects and focus mostly on maintaining and developing KDE software, especially for the Steam Deck. So this means that the Steam Deck's KDE desktop mode remains in good hands, and KDE development continues with strong backing. But what about the other projects that are related to Blue Systems? Well, there's not a lot of info on this right now, but what I could find is that Blue Systems is continuing to fund and develop the various projects they do now. But the consultancy firm aspects, like work for hire development, is no longer part of their plans, and that is why Techpaladin Software was started. So it seems they will coexist while working on different things, and as I understood it anyway for Blue Systems, they were first started as a pure philanthropic project. So it was just about philanthropy and nothing else. So the work for hire stuff came after the fact, but it really wasn't the intent. So this makes sense if that's correct, because it does seem like that is the reason why they're changing these things. So they would split off from having Blue Systems being a part of that and only doing the philanthropic stuff, and then have Techpaladin being the work for hire entity. Now, these companies are not part of the same ownership. It's just more of like a separate collaborative entities sort of thing. There's no drama to be found here. I know some people would try to make it a big deal out of it, but there's not really any drama. It's just the Blue Systems didn't really want to do this sort of stuff, so it's being split off into a different company. So nothing to see here. Move along. Unless you want to know more about KDE Plasma and this tech software, then there's plenty to see. So you can go check that out in the links in the show notes. The Codeweavers team have announced the latest release of CrossOver with CrossOver 25. For those who are not familiar, CrossOver is basically like a premium wine type of situation where it makes things that are Windows software and games work on Linux, also Mac and Chromebooks, much better in some ways. And for those who are curious, why is there a separate version than wine? Well, technically, the Codeweavers team actually works on a lot of stuff. So Codeweavers is not just working on CrossOver. They also work on Wine. A lot of the work that they do in CrossOver goes back into Wine later on. And also the people who make Proton, you guessed it, Codeweavers. So there's a lot of involvement with that side of stuff. And if you would like to, if you ever thought about how do you donate or send money to the work for Proton or send money for the work on Wine, actually purchasing CrossOver kind of does that. So you can buy CrossOver 25, get the benefits from it, and also help fund the work involved in Proton and Wine and that sort of stuff. Not exactly directly, but in an indirect way. So there you go. Now, what is CrossOver? Well, it's a compatibility layer running Windows software and games on Mac, Linux, and Chromebooks. It's built on Wine, translating Windows API calls without emulation or virtualization. Now, what's new in CrossOver 25? So the major improvements for CrossOver 25 is that there's a new DXMT renderer for DirectX 11 on macOS. Also, they've expanded game compatibility, so they have new support for Far Cry 6, The Last of Us Part 1, Dead Space Remaster, and more. Also, they have faster startup times for Steam Launcher, and GOG Galaxy and Epic Game Store now work on macOS for the first time. And they've also made some improvements to a variety of different like bug fixes and performance enhancements and all that sort of stuff. So if you're curious, you can get CrossOver try it out for a 14-day free trial, but you can also get it on sale right now with promo code NEXTLEVEL25, and that will get it for $55.50. And you can have that's like a 12 months update and 12 months support with CrossOver Plus, or you can get a lifetime license for $494. So that means that version will be available to you forever. And I like the fact that they do that sort of stuff. It's pretty cool. So if you'd like to help out in some way, you can get the monthly thing or you can get the lifetime license. Either way, it would help the work for Wine and Proton because it's the same people that work on all of that stuff. So check out CrossOver 25 now for a smoother Windows gaming experience on Linux if you'd like to, and you can find the links in the show notes. As Linux users, we know what's up. Security is non-negotiable, but with threats getting smarter, your security tools need to keep pace without dragging your system down. And traditional agents, they're slow, they leave blind spots. It's time for a smarter approach. That's why This Week in Linux is proud to be sponsored by Sandfly Security, the revolutionary agentless platform designed for Linux. Sandfly doesn't just detect and respond, it revolutionizes security with SSH key tracking, password auditing, and drift detection covering threats from every angle. Whether your systems are in the cloud, on-premises, or in embedded devices, Sandfly ensures they're all secure without the headaches of agent-based solutions. Listen to what Ken Kleiner has to say, the senior security engineer at the University of Massachusetts. He says, Sandfly is the first product I've seen that accurately and quickly detects thousands of signs of compromise on the Linux platform. Its unique method automates tasks which would be manually impossible. Automation is key with detection, and Sandfly completely fits this and other requirements. If your organization is using Linux, this should be part of your cybersecurity toolset. And if you'd like to learn more about Sandfly Security, check out the episode of Destination Linux 409 where we interviewed the CEO of Sandfly, and we had a fantastic conversation about cybersecurity, Linux, and so much more. And if you would like to experience security that's not just effective, but gives you peace of mind, no agents, no downtime, just cutting-edge protection, then dive into the future of Linux security at thisweekinlinux.com/Sandfly and see how Sandfly can transform your security strategy. That's thisweekinlinux.com/SANDFLY. That's thisweekinlinux.com/Sandfly. The Garuda Linux team have announced the latest release of their distribution with Broadwing. So this comes with the Linux kernel 6.13. They have a new welcome app called Garuda Ronnie, which stands for Reliable Assistant for Native Installations, which is basically a welcome app, but they wanted to have more than just the normal welcome app stuff. So they have assistant-related apps, gamer stuff, welcome stuff, and they wanted to combine all these different things into a smoother experience, and that is where Ronnie comes from. I have no idea if I'm saying it right. Probably not. So let me know in the comments if I got it wrong. There's also a new edition called Garuda Mocha. And this one, or Maca, maybe, not sure. But this is a KDE Plasma desktop with Capuchin theme. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it because, I mean, it is spelled as C-A-T, cat. So for those who are unfamiliar with Garuda, they have the Dragonized, and this is what they're mostly known for, is the Dragonized edition, which is based on KDE Plasma. And I think it looks nice, but it's also a little too aggressive for me. I feel like it has too much going on, and that's just my preference. But this new version is basically, it feels like they made it just for me. They didn't, but it feels like it. As you can see, this new one with the Capuchin theme is very subtle and more like pastel colors and just kind of, it's more like, it's Zen-like. It's more Zen-like in terms of usage. So this is more my style. We have a couple more additions to talk about, not just the KDE Plasma-based stuff. We're going to talk about Hyperland and i3 edition as well. and also the Sway edition in a bit. But I just thought this was kind of funny. When I scrolled down to get to the different editions, screenshots and stuff to show you, I get down here and it says for advanced users only. And that's kind of funny because I would put i3 and Sway into that as well. The Hyperlink edition has updated the screenshot script with GUM implementation. Also, they have a special workspaces for streamlined workflow and X11 as a secondary GDK backend for better support on older hardware has been added for this edition of Garuda Linux. For the i3 edition, they have added support for Font Awesome, which is for adding, for those who don't know, Font Awesome actually is kind of confusing as a name because it's not really a font, it's about icons, and it's very cool. But also this edition of i3 for Garuda Linux has better CPU temperature display, font sizes, and dunst settings. I'm not totally sure what dunst means, but there you go. And with the Sway edition, they have a new greeter, a new lock screen, and an updated, revamped version of the Waybar. If you'd like to learn more about Garuda Linux, check out the links in the show notes. The EFF has announced a new open source tool that they've made to detect cellular spying called Rayhunter. So this is to detect CSS or cell site simulators, not cascading style sheets, not that. So this is also known as stingrays. You might have heard that term, stingrays. And there's also IMSI catchers or MC catchers. So these are all basically interchangeable terms. You can use whichever one you want. So CSS or cell site simulators, they masquerade as legitimate cell towers to trick nearby phones into connecting. And the things that can be done when they connect is pinpoint the phone locations with very high accuracy, log IMSI or SIM card IDs, and the IMEI or the device serial numbers on your data. Also, basically being able to identify that particular phone, and also potentially intercept communications in some cases. Now, little is known about commercial CSS capabilities or exploits or deployment, but as far as like the overall usage, we know that some hackers use it, that some law enforcement have been caught using it, and some evidence suggests that CSS may even be used to surveil journalists and protests. But we now have Rayhunter. So Rayhunter is an open source tool made by EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, to detect CSS activity worldwide. And this software runs on affordable Orbic mobile hotspots, which you can get on Amazon or eBay. And if you want to help out the show and get one of these things, you can find the affiliate link in the description or in the show notes for that Orbic mobile hotspot, which is only $20, by the way. So depending on your region, it might be more or less, but it's around $20. And it's designed for activists, journalists, and privacy advocates with no technical expertise required. So you just basically, you buy this device and you install the Rayhunter on it. So how does Rayhunter work? Well, it intercepts and analyzes control traffic between the hotspot and nearby cell towers. It flags suspicious activity such as downgrades to vulnerable 2G networks, unusual IMSI or MC request from a fake tower, and also it does alerts to the user. So it does, if it's a blue or green bar, it's suggesting that it's safe. And if it's a red bar, then it's detecting suspicious activity. So for installation, basically, it's a simple setup for Mac users and Linux. It does not support Windows at this time. There's no information on whether it will at some point or not, but it does not right now. And the goals they're saying for this particular project is to do data collection for empirical research on CSS users worldwide, and also improving defenses against CSS surveillance or cell site simulation surveillance, and also informing legal and policy efforts to regulate CSS use. So if you want to get involved in this project and check out this software, you can purchase an Orbic hotspot for just $20 on Amazon, link in the description for the affiliate link, install Rayhunter, and then help track CSS deployment. There's also a frequently asked questions and a legal considerations to check out before you do it. I mentioned that legal consideration thing, and I wanted to quote a snippet from their blog post about that. They finished the blog post saying, "Use Rayhunter at your own risk. We believe running this program does not currently violate any laws or regulations in the United States. However, we are not responsible for civil or criminal liability resulting from the use of this software. If you are located outside of the U.S., please consult with an attorney in your country to help you assess your legal risks of running this program." so it's probably fine. But just wanted to highlight that part just in case. I want to tell you about what's happening with the TuxDigital network and the shows and all that sort of stuff. So first of all, we have Destination Linux. And with Destination Linux, this episode I want to make sure you check out is the latest one with John Mad Dog Hall being interviewed by Jill and the other Linux chicks of LA at the Southern California Linux Expo or Scale. And that is episode 410. You can also check out episode 409, which is an awesome interview we had with Craig Rowland from Sandfly Security. And it is a fantastic interview, not only because he's got a fascinating history about how he got in with Linux, how he got into cybersecurity and all that sort of stuff, but also we talk about just cybersecurity in general and like even things that are Linux related in terms of like Linux users, like whether you need antivirus and stuff like that. It's a fascinating interview. You absolutely should check it out. Destination Linux 409. And also, this is not out yet. This episode comes out a couple days before the next episode of DL, but we talk about the Mozilla Firefox stuff. So the Mozilla messy messaging mania, that's coming up in the next episode of Destination Linux. So check that out. DestinationLinux.net to subscribe to the show. Also check out Linux Out Loud. This is another show on the network. And this latest episode of 107, they're talking about gaming and robotics and just Linux powered fun. And Matt tests out a piece of hardware I've never heard of from a company I've never heard of, Chewy MiniBook X. Sure. Yes, Chewy. I think it's supposed to be pronounced Chewy. Who knows? But, it's a really interesting podcast. It's a really fun episode. Go check it out. I'll have a link in the show notes. And also check out the store because we have a new item in the store at tuxdigital.com/store. We have the This Is Linux shirt that is available right now in the store to celebrate the Twill 300 episode. For those who don't get it, the 300 movie, Sparta, there you go. And also, I'm kind of proud of the penguin. I think it's fun. So check it out this weekend. This is Linux in TuxDigital store, tuxdigital.com/store. Now let's get to the show. GStreamer project has announced the latest release of this cross-platform multimedia framework with GStreamer 1.26. And there is a lot of stuff in here. We're not going to go through everything because there's just way too many things to talk about. But first, H.266 versatile video coding is added for codec support. Also, low complexity enhancements video coding or LCEVC support has been added. And also a lot of cool stuff related to closed captioning and also speech synthesis, basically, and so much more. So let's dive in a little bit on some of these. So they've added support through Matroska with H.266 video and rotation tag support. And also, speaking of H.266, they also have versatile video codec support or VVC. And this is a successor to the H.264 or H.265/HEVC, but they've added a new H.266 parse element along with parsing API and type finding support and some codec utility functions. They've also added an H.266 decoder base class for hardware accelerated decoders. They've also added JPEG XS image codec support. So JPEG XS is a visually lossless, low latency, intra-only video codec for video production workflows. Now, the LCEVC, or low complexity enhancements video coding support, is it's kind of funny how it's the initialism and the name of it is very complex for something called low complexity. So LCEVC is a codec that provides an enhancement layer on top of other codecs such as H.264, for example. They've also made a lot of improvements for closed captions. So there's new H.264 and H.265 closed caption extractor and inserter elements. These extractor elements don't actually extract captions from the bitstream, but rely on parser elements to do that and add them to buffers in form of caption metas. The problem is that streams might contain B-frames, in which case the captions in the bitstream will not be in presentation order, and extracting them requires frame reordering in the same way that the decoder would do. So these new elements will do exactly that and allow you to extract captions in presentation order without having to decode the stream. There's some other caption stuff that you can check out if you want to with the links in the show notes, but I want to move on to the speech-to-text stuff because there is a really cool stuff that's been added. First of all, there's a new element around the AWS text-to-speech Poly services called Poly, and also they've added new elements around the AWS transcription and translation services called AWS Transcriber 2 and AWS Translate. For those who don't know, AWS is Amazon Web Services, and they have a way to do transcription from you give it audio and then it uses AI basic stuff to convert that into text transcriptions and translations and stuff like that. It's pretty reasonably priced too, but it's very cool in the sense that you can have it built into GStreamer. I think this is very cool. GStreamer is a fundamental piece that is available in a lot of different software that you might not even be aware that you're using it, but it's very commonly used. So Epic Games has announced that they're going to be adding support of Fortnite on Windows ARM, not Linux. The reason they didn't want to use it put it on Linux is because they say that the use case of Linux is not big enough, and that it's not. Once we have like tens of millions of users, then they'll do the porting to the Linux platform, which is interesting. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because Epic Games is now porting Fortnite on Windows ARM, which does not have tens of millions of users. Now, it's possible that it would eventually. And it's possible that them porting it to it would help Windows ARM get to that point, as well as porting other stuff they make. But that would be true with Linux too, Mr. Sweeney. So Fortnite is coming to Windows on Snapdragon. Epic Games announced Fortnite and easy anti-cheat support for Windows on ARM, and they're partnering with Qualcomm to expand game availability, which they could do with Linux as well. Now, it is worth noting that anti-cheat software is available on Linux, including Easy Anti-Cheat from Epic Games. It is also available in the Steam Deck, but kernel-level anti-cheat isn't supported. And that is because the Easy Anti-Cheat inside of Steam Deck is technically using a kernel, but it's using the Wine kernel, not the Linux kernel. And some people argue that that is not enough. I mean, depending on the complexity of how the game is built and the anti-cheat, it should be enough because detecting changes to the Wine kernel is very much the same as the Windows kernel. And if you're doing something that's outside of the host machine anyway, it doesn't matter if there's an anti-cheat that's kernel-based or whatever. But some companies are like to blame the Linux platform for various different things, including what Apex Legends did. I have a video about that on the channel if you want to learn more. But still, why no Fortnite on Steam Deck? Well, Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic Games, said in 2023, it doesn't make sense unless Steam Deck has tens of millions of users. Now, there's a lot of users on the Steam Deck, but that's what they're saying, which is why I was talking about how the Windows on ARM does not have tens of millions of users yet. It is likely that it will happen at some point, but this is definitely going to help it get there. So, yeah, Mr. Sweeney, you could just do the same thing with Linux and Steam Deck. Although I do acknowledge the fact that Valve is a competitor with the whole Epic Game Store and the Steam client and all that sort of stuff. I get that. So it might be a little bit more than just the users. So for now, Epic's focus is on Windows, of course. Not surprising because of what Tim Sweeney has said over many, many years. But Linux gamers can still hope that Valve's growing hardware ecosystem can change that because the Steam Deck and the SteamOS is getting more and more people into Linux. And also, it'd be very cool if the Valve team were to create like a Steam Deck console or a Steam console, like a Steam machine of sorts. And that would be awesome too, get more people who don't necessarily want a handheld device, but they still want to have SteamOS or something like that. So I think that would be very cool. So speaking of Steam and Valve, the first major seasonal sale of 2025 is now live with the Steam Spring Sale. So this is going to have big discounts across a wide range of games. And now there's even a deep discount section, which highlights some of the steepest price cuts, up to 90% that I found. There might even be higher, but the biggest one I found was 90%. And there's a lot of stuff on sale. Now, there's no Steam Deck hardware discounts right now, which is kind of a bummer if you were looking to get one. But Maybe at some point they'll do that. So they're not offering the discounts on the hardware just yet, but they sometimes do just the hardware itself in its own separate sale. So who knows? But the games that are on sale that you can check out is Resident Evil Village, Dead by Daylight, Tomb Raider 1 to 3 Remastered, Subnautica, Mad Max, The Witcher 3, Batman Arkham Knight, and many more. And these are discounts that are not just like 20% discounts. The Arkham Knight discount is 80% off. Witcher 3 is 80% off, which I think puts them both under $5. And then there's also 60% discounts, 85% discount for Mad Max, and so much more. So if you want to check out the Steam store, you can grab the deals right now before the sale ends, which is actually not that far away. So go check it out. It's through March 20th. And if you want to check it out, I'm sorry for your wallet, but there are some pretty good games that are on sale right now. So you're also welcome at the same time. Thanks for watching this episode of This Week in Linux. If you like what I do here on the show and want to be kept up to date with what's going on in the Linux and open source world, then be sure to subscribe. And of course, remember to like that smash button. If you'd like to support the show and the network, then consider becoming a patron by going to tuxdigital.com/membership, where you get a bunch of cool perks like access to the patron-only section of our Discord server and much, much more. You get tons of stuff like being able to join the patron-only post show that happens every week after the show, as well as all of these kinds of perks with Destination Linux podcast also. So there's tons of stuff, including you can even get a discount at the store by becoming a patron. Just go to tuxdigital.com/membership to do that. And speaking of the store, you can get a ton of cool stuff we have, like the Linux is Everywhere t-shirt or the This Week in Linux shirt at tuxdigital.com/store. Plus, while you're there, check out all the other cool stuff we have, like hats, mugs, hoodies, and so much more. tuxdigital.com/store. Of course, check out the This is Linux new merch there at the store that I am abnormally proud of the graphics for this. Go check it out. thisweekinlinux.com/store. And I'll see you next time for another episode of your source for Linux news. Thanks again for watching. I'm Michael Tennell. I hope you're doing swell. Be sure to ring that notification bell. And until next time, I bid you farewell.